We are on page 23. 23. Let's go back just a little bit. Let's just rewind, just tape for a little bit, and then come back to where we are, so put some perspective over here. If you remember, we said at the beginning of the course that we all start in Gan Eden, and we end up with Tchilat HaMeitim. And we said after the Chet of Adam Arishon, after the sin of Adam, we have to find a way back there. What is the mechanism by which we, the Jewish people, find a way back to Gan Eden? Non-Jewish people also get there, but in a different route. What is the methodology? That is through mitzvah. Mitzvah is the way to do it. Mitzvah is the mechanism. The word mitzvah is related to another word in Aramaic, which is tzavta. Not savta like your grandmother. Tzavta. Tzadi vav vav taf. Aleph. Tzavta, which is a connection. So let's get rid of this childish idea that mitzvah is a good deed. Okay, which sometimes it is and sometimes doesn't really feel like one. And let's kind of put it into another perspective of tzavta, which is to connect. It's a binding. It's a binding. It's a kesher. Right? It's a knot. That is the root of the word mitzvah. It's going to connect us. How it connects us, who it connects us to, we shall see. Ultimately, the role of the mitzvot is to take us back to the future. That's a good name for a movie, that. That's what we're trying to do. Okay? How do they do this? How do the mitzvot do this? So let's look at the very famous Rambam. Now, if you thought the Rambam we looked at about physical health isn't discussed by many Jewish people, how we should eat well and exercise well and all the rest of it, this Rambam is really not studied. Ask most people who know about Judaism and they're like, I cannot believe such a Rambam exists. But it's there in black and white in the Mishnah Torah. The same set of books that discusses the laws of kosher and the laws of chagim, laws of tzedakah, and laws of everything else. Look at this Rambam on the top of page 23. The Rambam is going to define the reason for all the mitzvot. Which is pretty wild, no? Meredith, isn't that strange? All the mitzvot! All 613, this is why we do it. Okay? And it goes like this. V'chol elu hadvarim. All of these matters, the mitzvot, exist kedei, in order, l'chafetz yitzro, to help you take control, to overcome your yetzer, your negative traits, u'letakein da'otav, and to correct your personality traits. That's what they're for. To make you into a better and nicer person. V'rov dinei Torah, and the vast majority of all the laws of the Torah, whether you're keeping kosher, putting on tefillin, not eating chametz on Pesach, keeping the Yovel, keeping the Shemitah, whatever it is, rov dinei Torah, einan ella, come for this reason, as eitzot merchok, as pieces of advice, as instructions from afar, umigadol ha'eitza letaken adert v'liyasher kol ha'masim, from the great advisor, which is God, as a way to help us improve our character traits and straighten our ways. Why do we eat matzah? To become a better person. Why do we keep Shabbos? Become a better person. Why do we fast Yom Kippur? Become a better person. Why do we dip the apple in the honey? Because it's sweet. Become a better person. Whatever the mitzvah is, whether you see the connection. Now, many times we see the connection. Right? Benem l'chaveiro, I hear. Right? I'm not jealous. Right? We don't take revenge. We don't bear a grudge. Right? All these mitzvot, we say that makes sense. But we say all the mitzvot ultimately should make you into a better person. That's what they're doing. If you're still nasty after doing mitzvot, and you're a nasty person, we're all nasty sometimes. But if you're, you missed the whole point. That's the Rambam. That is the Rambam. Okay? They're there to make us into better people. God does not need our mitzvot, as the Ramban says. So that's the Rambam. Now the Ramban. Hear the pronunciation difference. It's Rambam and Ramban. That's how you can hear the difference when you hear people say it. So it says the Ramban. Shiratzu loma. These midrashim that we kind of like hinting to. She'enato eleva mitzvah l'kadosh baruch hu. God does have no personal benefit from the mitzvot. Right? Mitzvot are not there to appease God in any way. Other religions, right, and paganism, right, which pre-existed even Judaism, right, Egyptian gods, are all there to appease God. Right? You need the rain, so you worship the rain. You need the sun, so you have the sun god, Ra. Right? You need the fish from the Nile, so you have the fish god, Dagon. Everything was about appeasing God. You do idol worship. People used to kill their children, as we said. That's a form of avodah zarah, to appease God. Comes on Moshe Rabbeinu and says, no. Right? This whole Jewish thing is not because God needs us or our mitzvot. The mitzvot are for us to help us to be better people. They're there to perfect and to refine mankind. That is the entire idea. Right? Don't take it from me. Don't shoot the messenger, you know. No, seriously, don't shoot the messenger. That makes sense. God has no benefit from them. We get it. Rather, the benefit for the mitzvot is the person themselves, to avoid damage, to avoid heretical beliefs, or despicable character traits. That's what it's all about. Or Lizkor hanissim and niflot haboris brachot. Remember the great miracles. Now, the Ramban was actually a great Kabbalist. Not really. Unlike the Ramban was. And his whole theory is he sides more with the miraculous. Right? Obviously, the Rambam believes in miracles too. But he makes that feature and actually says the reason we keep Shabbat as a connection to Yetziat Mitzrayim is to remember the great miracles, remember the great miraculous nature of this world and God. So he follows that route, but everyone is obligated to remember mitzvot, right? L'datat Hashem, in order to know God. Okay? V'zeu l'tzaref behen. That's what it means to refine them, right? Just like gold or silver is refined in a large vat, they boil it up and they heat it in order to remove all the dross from the metal and scoop it off. So to the Jewish people, and all the mitzvah come to the same thing. Mitzrayim is actually called in the Torah the Kor HaBarzel. The Kor HaBarzel.
What is this?
The Mitzrayim, Egypt, is referred to as the Kor HaBarzel, which means the refining furnace. Just like gold is refined, so too we need to be refined as well. That happens in a number of ways. Sometimes through challenges, sometimes through tests. And the mitzvot are meant to do that as well. It's meant to make us into better people. This is the entire purpose of world history for the Jewish people and for everyone. Right? The non-Jews, we'll see later on the course, have mitzvot as well. That also, it's just a different route. But hopefully it's the same place. Okay? That's the Rambam. That's what it means to refine. That we should refine like silver. Sheyu kekesef saruf kiatzurah kekesef en maso below ton. There's no reason why. Comes a reason. Avalahoti menu kol sig is there to remove all the dross, all the bad stuff. Mitzvot should make you a better person. V'chen mitzvah lahotzi milevenu kol amunara. All bad beliefs. By doing mitzvot, it removes the dross, all the bad stuff. For example, not believing God, heretical beliefs. They purify us. They're good for us. Okay. I brought down a famous medrash that I think most of you have heard before. We're on page 24. And this is the midrash about Turnus Rufus and Rabbi Akiva. You've probably heard this before. And there was a discussion in the midrash. The discussion was, who's better? The actions of God or the actions of man? Funny question. That's what Turnus Rufus, Yimach Shemo, the Roman general, asked Rabbi Akiva. And he says, Masa, there was a story. Shisha'al Turnus Rufus, Harasha, the evil Turnus Rufus, at Rabbi Akiva, Ezu masim na'im shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu shel basar v'dam. Whose actions are nicer? Okay, and this was a very interesting question to ask. And he answered, Shel b'nei Adam nimatz, they're better. The actions are na'im. They're better. The actions of people are better. Right? And he said, Turnus Rufus turned around to Rabbi Akiva and said, what are you talking about? How can you say that human action is better than God action? God made the universe and everything in it. And Rabbi Akiva, so Rabbi Akiva says, well, you can't make the comparison on who created the universe because use something that we both can do. Now, Turnus Rufus then turned around and said, why do you perform circumcision? That's actually the pretext and the context of this conversation. Because if you remember, the Romans followed from the Greeks, and they were against any form of bodily mutilation. They believed the form of the body was perfect. And we perform circumcision. So the discussion really was, why do you perform circumcisions? Meaning, why are you trying to improve on something that God made? If God is so great and makes human form, why do you think you're better that you now change human form as a baby? That was the conversation they were having. And that's when this debate came up. If God is so great, which you believe, and God is perfect, then why trying to improve God's actions? Whose actions are better? God's actions that makes the person, or your actions that try to change what God made? That is the context of the conversation. There's a lot more depth to the conversation, but that's pretty much what's going on. Rabbi Akiva turned around and said, I knew that's what you were discussing, and therefore that's why I said that the actions of humans are better than the actions of God. And Rabbi Akiva said, let me give you an example. Rabbi Akiva gave him a nice cake, right? Like a 7-layer cake with chocolate and cream and icing on top and all the rest of the good stuff that comes with it. Yeah? And then he brought him some stalks of grain of wheat. And he said, you tell me, Turnus Rufus, which is better, cake or wheat? And you have to say, the cake is better than the wheat. So 1 second. God made the wheat, and we made the cake. Therefore, our actions are better. That's the mashal. Let's look at the nimshal. That's the analogy. Let's look at what we learn from it, what we learn from this metaphor. He was saying that God gives us the raw utensils, the wheat. God gives us the wheat. And wheat is amazing, but you can't eat wheat. You got to take it, you got to grind it, you got to add water, you got to knead it, you got to make it into a nice cake, you got to add ingredients, then it becomes edible. So too, God makes the human, but we have to work on the human and make the human perfect, which is why this is used as a circumcision discussion, because circumcision is that area of the body where we need to fix ourselves the most when it comes to the intimacy between male and female. That's the area, there's no coincidence, that's where the Brit Milah, the covenant between God and the Jewish people, occurs. Okay, not a coincidence. It could have been just like I take a bit of skin off the ear or off your nose. Actually, Jews do that as well. Okay, but that area of the body was chosen, as if to say, this is the area that we need to put focus on. And by the way, as a side point, and this is going to come up later when we discuss Mashiach later in the course. Listen carefully. Put this in your cerebellums. We know that the circumcision is directly related to our owning the land of Israel. There's a direct connection between Brit Milah and having Israel, which is why Avraham Avinu had to have a Brit Milah before he went to Eretz Yisrael. The Jewish people had to have a Brit Milah before they entered into Eretz Yisrael as a nation. Our connection to the land of Israel is our connection to having the covenant on that part of the body, as if to say that we want to control that area of our lives in order to merit the land of Israel. That is why, it's going to sound a little weird right now, but we'll go into this. That is why the Muslims and the Arabs who do perform circumcision on their children, who are not commanded to do it, get Jerusalem now before Mashiach comes, in the merit of that and their tefillot. And that's a wild thing to say, if you appreciate it, but it's no coincidence that they get to control Har Habayit before the third temple is built. They get it in Olam Hazeh, we get it in Olam Haba, because of their Mesirat Nefesh of tefillah and this particular mitzvah, although they are not commanded to do it. They are lo mitzuva v'oseh, they're not commanded. I know it sounds strange, but we'll revisit that later on when we figure out the role of the nations before Mashiach comes. Okay, back to our topic. That's what he's saying. Rabbi Akiva is saying the idea of mitzvot, like circumcision and all the others, are there to help us improve ourselves in order for us to merit Olam Haba, the next world. Okay? So the question we have to figure out now is, can we figure out the reason for the mitzvot? Are you allowed to figure out the reasons for the mitzvot? That's what we have to kind of figure out for a few minutes today. That's going to be the bulk of today's class. Right, we're given these directives, these mitzvot. We have 613 of them. Right? We have Taryag mitzvot. Taryag is a number, not a word. 613 mitzvot. Are we expected to figure out the reasons why we have mitzvot. And we're going to see the Jewish world is actually divided in this. It is divided in this, and there's different opinions. And some people have done it and been criticized. Some great people, as we're going to see. I mean, I just did it. I tried to figure out a reason for circumcision, didn't I? See, it wasn't my reasoning, okay? But I would have to find out the reason for a mitzvah. So you please tell me, dear students, what is the advantage of doing that and the disadvantage? Because there's going to be an advantage, but there's going to be a disadvantage of doing it as well. What would you say is disadvantage or advantage? You put your hands up and you can try to answer. Yeah. Are you going advantage or disadvantage? Advantage, yes.
When there's a reason behind something, it's easier to do.
Right? When there's a reason behind something, we know the reason to do it, it's going to help me do it. I'm going to be motivated to do it. If I know that the reason behind tzedakah is because the world needs to be helped, and it's going to improve myself and all the other, I'll be like more apt to do it rather than just do it. Why? Because I said so.
But then I'll take that too. If you know a reason behind it.
Okay, so let's go to disadvantage. Anyone? Jordan?
Yeah, if you know the reason, and then let's say like times change or that reason might not be relevant, then you could say that the mitzvah is not relevant, but the reason doesn't matter necessarily.
So, says Jordan, if we just go with the rationale behind a mitzvah, I may fall into some danger. And what is that danger? What is that danger? That danger is, oh, I know why we do it. And you know what? That reason doesn't apply anymore. That's like so old. That reason, that rationale does not work, and therefore I don't have to do it. I'll give you an example of this. I'll give you an example where a big mistake was made. And movements within Judaism therefore dismissed this mitzvah. And that's actually one of the reasons that we're going to discuss this mitzvah in detail out of all the mitzvot. Not today, in a few weeks after the Chagim. Kosher. Kosher. What is the reason that we keep kosher? What does the Torah give us as a reason to keep kosher? Anyone know? What does the Bible say why we should keep kosher? That tells us what to do. What's the reason why?
We don't have to no?
We're not given a reason. We're not given a reason. It does say to become an kadosh, holy people. Holy nation don't eat non-kosher food. Have rationales over history come up for this mitzvah? Maybe rationales for this mitzvah of kosher? Yeah. People have said it's health reason. We don't eat pig because pigs have trichinosis, right? They're diseased animals, they're dirty animals, right? We don't eat lobster and shrimp and the other. How can I not eat lobster, by the way? Still don't get that. It's like a big cockroach. If I could eat non-kosher, I'll be like, you know what, give me a Big Mac. I don't have that lobster thing, right? All these Jews, right, going in the restaurant, putting on their pajamas on, right, climbing up there, getting their crackers out, hocking in there. Oh, God. Right? Why do we eat? The reason is because Hashem says so. Now, I'm going to try to find a rationale behind it. Oh, it's a health reason. Interestingly, no one pretty much says health is the reason not to keep kosher. No one does. That's very interesting. However, people have tried to find a rationale. But when I get to a point in history, well, now I know scientifically that is not a valid reason because we know that you can eat non-kosher food and still be healthy, which we know. And by the way, you can also eat healthy kosher food and be very non-healthy. There is no correlation between both of them. I have a problem. So there's a danger. So on one side, I'm like, you know what? It's good because when I know the reason, why Imma? Why Abba? Because I said so. I don't want to do it then. I need a reason. And by the way, they used to work with our grandparents and our great-grandparents. People say, why do it? Hashem says so. Right? But we are the pre-Messianic generation. Right? And we're like, no, I need to know. There's a lot of information out there, and the world's amount of information is growing. I need to know why. And we're like, I'll tell you why. But don't think this is the only reason. Because if you do, you can end up in hot water. This debate goes back hundreds, if not thousands, of years. Let's look at two versions. The Rambam and the other quote-unquote rationalists find reason for mitzvot. And then you have the deeper commentators, more from the Kabbalah side, the mystical tradition, the non-rational, and they were like, don't bother trying to find a reason for mitzvah because you're never going to fathom the depth behind what a mitzvah is about. And if you try to rationalize it and find a reason for it, you're going to have nowhere. So you have these two worlds coming together. In the end, the Jewish people have voted. We find a reason. We follow the Rambam. We follow the Sefer Chinuch, and he finds the Shorish mitzvah, the Talmud mitzvah. Right, Sefer Chinuch was a book written about 1,000 years ago. We don't know who wrote it actually. But this particular rabbi turned up and he said, you know what? My son is about to become bar mitzvah, and he wants to know the reasons. Right? I mean, this is what's happening 1,000 years ago. Right? I said to him, do it. Keep Shabbat. Why should I? Right? Why should I, Amma? Why should I? Right, let me give you some reasons why. And he calls it the shoresh and the tam ha-mitzvah. The tameh ha-mitzvot. The tameh, this means the taste of mitzvah. Why would the word for the reason be called a taste? Because you can eat a food and get nutrition from it, but you're only going to enjoy it when there's a taste. So the word we use to describe the taste, the explanation, the rationale behind a mitzvah is called tameh ha-mitzvot. So that's what this debate is. Right? What's the rationale, the tameh ha-mitzvot? What does it take? What makes it enjoyable? So Rav Chaim Volozhin says, you're not going to do it. You can try, you're never going to figure out, because the Torah is the mind of God. We're top page 25. Kol tameh ha-mitzvot. Right? The tameh ha-mitzvot, the rationale, the reasons behind the mitzvah, he says, forget about it. Right? Ad chalatam lon galu adayin l'shum adam b'olam afa Moshe Rabbeinu. He said, even Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know the reason for the mitzvah. Believe that? Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest prophet that ever lived in Jewish history, even he didn't know the reason for the mitzvah. Ultimately, that's wild, right? Ki Torah Kedosha, because the Holy Torah, Atzur Melamala, comes from a very high and lofty and holy place, right? Rosh Al Kol Haragasha, from any form of Haragasha, any form of understanding. The Eich Efsha Shihatava, right? Musor La Sagat Adam. How can you be able to master? How can you be able to capture and understand this eternal, this otherworldly thing called the Torah, the blueprint of the universe, the mind of God? The mind of God. How's that possible? He can't do it. So that's the one side. We'll call them mystics, if you will, but the non-rationalists go with that side. But then you have the Rambam, who says differently. He says, Afal Pisha Kol Chakei Torah Gezerot, although ultimately all of the mitzvot in the Torah are gezerot. What does gezerot mean? Decrees, meaning do them. Why? Because I said so. Even though they're all gezerot from Hashem, they are laws from the king, and you do them because I said so. He says, Ra'i, it is fitting. By the way, when he wrote this, it was pretty controversial. Right? Not everyone was very happy with the Rambam for doing this. Sounds wild for us. The Rambam is Kadosh and one of the greatest Jewish thinkers in history. Ad Moshe, Moshe, from Moshe to Moshe, from Moshe Rabbeinu to Moshe Maimonides. There was no one else like Moshe. Right? But that took a little bit of time. Right? People burnt his books when he was alive. So, but history has voted the Rambam is Kadosh. Right? No one doesn't hold the Rambam in the highest decree. Still, it's worth thinking about them. Whenever you're able to give a tam, a taste, a reason, ten lo tam, give it one. That is why the sages said that King Solomon, King Solomon, the King Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech, was one of the few people who knew the reasons for all the mitzvot. Now, even he ended up failing in one area. Now, I'm not saying this. So Chazal say. Does anyone know where he failed in this one particular area? Shlomo HaMelech? Chachamim, right? He said there was a law that a king can only marry how many wives? 18. And he said, well, the reason is because this is by the way the wisest people in person in Jewish history. And he said, well, that's for but and I have the rationale, and therefore I'm allowed to. And the Gemara says he made a mistake. And a lot of the downfall of history, now he was the great tzaddik. This is Shlomo HaMelech, right? The greatest Jew that ever lived, right? We have the greatest Sforim in Tanakh come from Shlomo HaMelech, and still, right? I can't say these words. I'm just quoting what the Gemara says. In this area, there were repercussions. Although his motivation was good, he tried to quote unquote, rationalize, say the Chachamim, and it ended up being a bit of his downfall, that he thought, I'll do more, and I was able to marry more wives, and thereby spread ethical monotheism and Torah to the rest of the world, which he was very successful in doing, but whatever reason, it went too far, because the Torah says don't do it. So the rationale takes you so far, and then at some point you lose it. Many Jewish movements today that started as cults, okay, and small sects, began with this idea. We will rationalize, we will find reasoning behind, and if the reasoning we feel is no longer applicable, the mitzvah goes. The mitzvah cannot change. Now the Rav Chaim Volozhin or the Rambam would say you can change a mitzvah. You can try to understand it, but our mortal minds can only get so far. And then we'll see in a moment there are a whole element of mitzvot that no one knows the reason for. Even the greatest person, Shlomo Melech, who knows the reason for all the mitzvot, says the Rambam, even he was chaser in one mitzvah, which he never understood. Anyone know which mitzvah was eluded even the great Shlomo HaMelech? The reason, which one? No, although that's also a chok, but maybe you knew the reason for that as well. The Para Aduma, the other famous chok, right? He says, I don't get it. Now we say we don't get it, and he says, I don't get it. We don't get it. He really didn't get it, right? And if he didn't get it, we really don't get it. You know what I'm saying? A paraduma, the red heifer, that is the animal that's killed, which is burnt, then sprinkled onto the person to matar them from tumat hamet, from impurity, right? So even he was guarded from knowing that one mitzvah, to say that you think you know everything, you don't know everything. Ultimately, mitzvah are done as a way to attack in the person, to fix you up. You'll find a rationale. If you don't, the mitzvah must still be kept. Okay? The other famous one I hear all the time, because I teach the laws of Shabbat to many people who don't know anything about Shabbat. And they say, well, it used to be hard to make fire. Old people used to bang rocks together to make fire. Now we turn on the switch, it's not work anymore. This is drivel. The reason we do not make a fire is not because it is avoda, hard work, because it's a malacha, one of the 39 forbidden activities that exist in the Beit Hamikdash, in the Mishkan, and eventually the Beit Hamikdash. That is why we don't do it. It has to do with physical effort. Okay, that's another failing of various groups within the Jewish people that don't understand that it's not an avodah, it's a malacha. You have to know intricacies over there.
Yeah, but it's driving on Shabbat. That's like Darabana.
No, it's pretty alright, I would say. I would say, by the way, even the Rabbanah is still forbidden. Right? Because we still have a Torah law, they have to follow the mitzvah of the rabbis. But you're turning on the ignition, and the lights come on when you do various things, that's still Isur. Maybe your phone is a Rabbanah. Yes?
So, I don't get it. When they say you do a mitzvah, and like, if you don't have meaning behind it, then it doesn't count, you might as well not do it.
That's not what they say. They say it's still worth doing a mitzvah, even though you don't know the meaning behind it, because the job gets done. We're saying you're going to get more out of it when you understand the reason for it. That's what the Rambam's saying. You're going to get more, you get a tam for it by knowing the reason for it. Right? But even if you don't know the reason, even if you don't like it, which many times we don't want to do a mitzvah, right? I don't want to call my mother, which I do every day, sometimes. I'm busy, I'm tired, right? She doesn't want to call me. And I don't want to, keep kosher all the time because I'm hungry and there's only non-kosher places around me. But we still do it. So even if we don't want to do it, right? And if we don't want, it's still worth doing. Right? If you do a mitzvah, lo lishma, eventually you'll do it lishma. You'll do it for not the right reasons. Right? I give charity because I want to be recognized and have my name up on the wall. Is it worth doing the mitzvah still? Is it worth me giving $5 million to Yeshiva University? Right? To have my name up on the wall? What's the answer? Yeah! Absolutely is. For 100%. Oh, but you're doing it because you want to have honor in your name. I'm like, okay. Is there a better way to do it? Yeah, anonymously. Maybe that's better. But even giving it to have your name on the wall is good because people see your name on the wall and they're like, oh, I want to give as well. So it motivates other people to give. It's actually the tradition of putting names on walls and synagogues and on people, Like this rabbi is sponsored by, Mrs. Emily Cohen, whatever it is, Still worth saying, It's going to motivate other people to give. Is it the best way? Maybe not. Still worth doing. Right? Says the Ramban. Now the Ramban is kind of in between. He was actually a great Kabbalist in his own right. Okay. He also gave various more deeper rationales. Bottom page 25. Amru, it says in Pirkei Avot, in the second chapter, Mishnah 1, Have Zahir b'mitzvah kavachamura. Says the Mishnah, one should be careful with a mitzvah that people treat lightly, just as a mitzvah people treat seriously. Right? That is what the Mishnah says. Why? Shekulon chamudot v'chavivot ma'od. Because all the mitzvot are special, very special to Hashem. Would somebody tell me what a light mitzvah is and a serious mitzvah? Aren't all mitzvot serious? Right? What is this whole thing? Light and serious? Kala, chamura?
Isn't it totally
What is light and heavy? What's a light mitzvah? What's a serious mitzvah? What is going on over here? What are the depth behind this mitzvah that the Ramban is focusing on? Yeah.
Is it like a mitzvah kala is a mitzvah that like it's easy for us to do and it's convenient for us to do?
Okay. So there is a subjective and an objective. Some mitzvot subjectively are easy. Right? For us as individuals, subjectively. Right? A person may find it easy to give tzedakah. For someone else, it's difficult to give tzedakah. For some people, taking out $20, putting in the charity box is easy. For some people, right, the hand gets stuck in their power and I can't do it. So subjectively, right, don't think this is a light mitzvah. Don't think it's still an important mitzvah. So mitzvah which I consider light and not important, whatever, that's a small one. Put a mezuzah on the door, right? Right, give it tzedakah. I consider it light. It's still worth doing. Don't differentiate. That's some. Objectively, some mitzvahs are just easier. Right? Putting mezuzah on the door is just easier than, I don't know, fasting Yom Kippur. Right? You put it up on the door and that's it. Shalom Al Yisrael. Right? You got a petach, you got mezuzot, you got a mashkof, you got two sides, you got a posts, and you got your lintel on top. Stick a mezuzah, dayenu. Right? Preparing for Purim, right? It's easier than preparing for Pesach, although actually it's got much harder actually. Right? The amount of mishloach manot my wife makes like 600 every year, right? It's become harder for Purim than Pesach. But, objectively speaking, Purim is easier than Pesach. It says, don't make a mistake. Right? All mitzvah, even though they are generally easier to do, should not be looked down upon. Why? He says, because all mitzvot, we don't know the ultimate rationale. What may seem like a light mitzvah to you, or a light mitzvah to everyone, could still be a very important mitzvah. That's the Rambam. Shebakol shah adam modeh behen le'elokav, because no matter what the mitzvah is, a person fulfills the mitzvah, he acknowledges God. That's the, you know the words, the Ramban, that's his whole, all mitzvot ultimately are there to help us recognize there is a God. The covenant called a mitzvot, shenamin belokeinu v'noda alav shehu bareinu. Any mitzvah is there. The purpose of mitzvot helps us believe in God and to thank Him for creating us. That's what they all do. That's what they all do. Which is why so many mitzvot are related to Tziyat Mitzrayim, coming out of Egypt, the exodus of Egypt. 36 mitzvot that I know of are because we came out of Egypt. We were slaves, Hashem took us out. We're grateful to God. We were slaves. God took us out. I'm grateful. Thank you so much. Okay? That is the Ramban. Okay. Before we do 26, which is the most important piece I want to do with you today, and I left the best to last, let's just break down the different types of mitzvot that exist for us as a people. Let's break down the famous mitzvot. So the mitzvot are broken down, and this is Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, into 3 categories. Right? We know, actually break down to more. We have 613 mitzvot. They are divided into 2 groups by the rabbis. They are, as we said, 248 mitzvot aseh, right? Positive mitzvot, stuff you do, and 365 mitzvot lo taseh, right? Stuff you don't do. That's one breakdown. They're also broken down to 3 groups. And those 3 groups are
What's broken down to be?
all 613 are broken down into mishpatim, which we're going to call, I mean, usually we translate the word mishpatim as judgments, right? But that's not going to be suffice over here. Chukim, which you've all heard of, which are translated as statutes. When I was a kid, Mary says I thought it was saying statues. I'm like, we have mitzvah that are statues? No, it's not statues, it's statutes. We'll explain that in a second as well. And the final group is, most people don't know this. No one know? Edut. Testimonies. That is the broken down of all 3. They are each different, and all 613 are going to end up within one of those 3 groupings. Let's define them. We have to know the reason behind each of them. So, mishpatim, the best way to define this, which actually Rabbi Hirsch defines that, of Samson Raphael Hirsch, was a rabbi who lived in Frankfurt am Main in the 1800s. And he says, these are the rational justice mitzvot. They make sense. Right? These are the kind of things that you could have figured out. Had no one told me, had the Torah not been given, we could have figured this out. Because most nations, not all nations, but most nations figure this out. For example, do not kill. Right? That's a mishpat. That's a law. Okay? I have a rationale. Why do we kill? Because it's wrong to kill. We can figure that out. Why else do we kill? Because if we kill, everyone's going to kill, and there'll be no one left. Right? So it makes sense. Do not steal. Right? All those mitzvot that are kind of like rational mitzvot fall under mishpatim. Fall under mishpatim. Makes sense? Okay. Sounds good. What are chukim? What's a chok?
Kosher, Ha'aduma,
So,
and Shatnez.
very, very nice. So the classic example, what does that mean? Mitzvah that there is no rationale, or there is no rationale that we can figure out on a rational basis. We'll see that the Kabbalists, and we will be doing this semester, will find reasons why. We'll find reasons why in Kabbalah, but we say that means shut level, we don't know the reason for them. Maybe we know somehow in the spiritual, mystical world what happens when this mitzvah is done or not done, but we'll leave that aside. There's no rationale. If you can sit trying to figure it out, you can't figure it out. Such as para aduma, the red heifer. Now, by the way, what makes this into a chok is a big question. Some say it's taking a red cow, right, with no black hairs whatsoever, not even two of them, stuck together, burning it, and that has the power to purify you. Some say, well, there's a lot of weird stuff like that in Judaism, right? Maybe it's the fact that the person who is impure, when they are sprinkled with the para aduma, becomes pure, and the sprinkler, who is pure, becomes impure. There is this weird aspect to the mitzvah where the sprinkled becomes pure and the sprinkler who was pure becomes impure. Maybe that's what it's about. Maybe that's the aspect to it to understand. Right? It's hard for us to know even what the chok aspect, but the chok, shatnez, that is the mixing of wool and linen into one garment, right? Wool and flax, right? Derivative into one garment. That is a chok. We do not know the reason why that mitzvah exists. We have hints in the Torah. We know Cain and Hevel brought a sacrifice to Hashem. One brought flax, one brought wool, right? They were separately, and one brought flax, was considered to be a lower quality, okay? And mixed them together. But these are all ramazim. They are not rationales. As says Rashi even, kosher. Kosher is a chok. We don't know the reason. Now we're going to try to find some rationale behind it, but even that's going to be mildly inconclusive when we get to that point. Okay?
Can you say that being kosher is being like humanitarian?
There is a mitzvah to not mistreat animals. Sar balei chayim.
No, like not to like cause maybe for the like actually the calf to be eaten with his mom.
Okay, so happens to be, we're going to see, they will say this promotes cruelty by doing that, right? And we include all animals in that. There's a cruelty act. We use shchita, right, which is the most, we believe, the most humane methodology, the sharpest knife with no nicks in it whatsoever. This is all true. Ultimately, that's not the reason. That may be a benefit of the mitzvah, but that is not the real reason behind it. So we're going to separate and say there's a benefit and there's a reason, right? There's a benefit, but what's the reason behind it? Kosher, says Rashi, there's no reason. Right? Become an kadosh, from a holy people. I don't see why eating a ham sandwich is going to have any reflection of holy people. It's a chok. So what's the last category? What are these edut? What are these edut over here? These are testimonies. Over here, best way that I think describe it, right? It's like, kind of makes sense, but then doesn't make. I wouldn't have figured out had you not taught this. I would never figure it out. Nobody, no society would say no wool and linen. No one would say don't eat pig. Everybody eats pig, right? Everyone's going to, right? So it's kind of a mix between these two. Is edut. So it's kind of Shabbat. It acts as a testimony to belief. Shabbat happens to be categorized over here, right? Could I have figured out a day of rest? I could have figured that out, right? Happens to be that the non-Jewish world also gives a day of rest, which interestingly falls on the same day as ours. Thank goodness. Didn't have to, by the way. That itself is miraculous. That's another discussion when we discuss Shabbat next semester. Shabbat could be it. Pesach, everything goes with Pesach. I would never have figured that out. How would I have known? How would I have known that that's what a person should do? So things that act as testimonies, as signs, as symbols, these things and objects will fall under edut, under testimonies. Okay, so this makes up the core of the mitzvot. And we'll dive more into mitzvot later. And all of them, ultimately said, are going to have to influence us. Turn to page 26, and this is my most favorite piece of Torah. I love it, people. Yes?
What about, like, let's say, kosher, can it not fall up there? Because
Nope,
that
it's a
sign
chok.
of-
It's a chok. We may find certain aspects to it, but ultimately it is a chok. Okay, let's have a look at the words of Rav Aaron of Barcelona, not that we know who he is, in the Sefer Chinuch. Now, once again, we said the Sefer Chinuch was reasons for mitzvot. Reasons for mitzvot. Okay? Now, he's going to give what's called a very famous statement. Now, I'm not going to tell you where he says this. All right? I'm not going to tell you not which book. It's in the Sefer Chinuch. What he does is he goes through the parashiot, very simple. He goes through the parashas of the Torah, and he divides the Torah into 613 sections, every mitzvah in the Torah, and then he gives a reason for each one. Right? So mitzvah number 1, Peruvu, have children, and I'll give you a reason why. Right? Populate the earth, make the world better, and then he goes through, and then he gets to Bereshis, not too many mitzvah. Then he gets to Shemot, and whoa, it's packed. Right? So this book, called the Sefer Chinuch, is divided into 613 sections. I'm not going to tell you right now where he mentions this little essay, because he's not going to mention the mitzvah itself over here, but it's related to the mitzvah's discussion. Understand what I'm saying? In this book, the Sefer Chinuch stops and says, let me give you a principle of Judaism life. Okay? It's actually a psychological principle. Where he says this, I'll tell you at the end of class, in about 10 minutes. But for now, let's just take it as a piece in and of its own, and then we'll connect it as to why he mentions it there and not somewhere else. With me? You get the method to my madness? Hello? We there? Great. Let's follow inside. He starts with a very famous expression which I would highlight or underline because it's going to end up in your midterm, most likely, although I haven't written it yet. Most likely will end up in a midterm because this is really his main thesis. He says, Adam nifal kafi polatav. A person is influenced by their actions. Now, that's a very strange thing to say because we know that people are influenced by their thoughts. Right? And he says the exact opposite. He says, Judaism believes you're influenced by what you do, not necessarily what you think. Not only that, your thinking is going to be influenced by what you do. And by the way, that's why we have in all the mitzvot, 630 mitzvot, except 6 of them, the 6 mitzvot tamidiyos, the 6 constant mitzvot, all the mitzvot involve an action. You got to light the candles for Shabbat. You got to make Havdalah over a candle. Now you got to shake the lulav. Now you got to pray. You got to give tzedakah. Every mitzvah involves an action.
You know why?
He's kind of answering. Hold on. He's answering. To be part of it. He's answering this and saying, well, why? I'll tell you why. Because the mitzvah we're talking about involve action, ma'asim. Not only that, what you do with your body, with your hands, with your feet, with your money, with your time, this is going to influence your thinking. Right? Unlike most people think, well, go to a therapist, change your head, and then you'll change your actions. That's not the other way around. No. We believe you change your actions, you change your mind. The libo, your heart, the whole machshvotav, and all of your thoughts, tamid achar masav hu aseh behem, is going to be influenced by what you do with your action, with your masim. Im tov, im ra, whether good or bad. If your actions are bad, you become a bad person. If your actions are good, you become a good person. And then he says something quite astonishing. V'afilu rasha gamor, even a completely evil person, bilibo, in their heart. The other person's really nasty. You know what I'm saying? You know those people who are just nasty, nasty people? Can't say a good thing. Right? They just, all day, they think about doing bad. How am I going to hurt someone? How am I going to talk bad about someone? You have such a person. All they think about all day is, how can I steal? How can I cheat? Let's say they have a change inside them. They say, you know what? I'm going to fix my actions. and I'm going to get involved in Torah and mitzvah. I'm going to learn Torah. I'm going to do mitzvah. The afilu shel Hashem Shemaim, even if they do it not for the right reason, they do it for ulterior motives. I'll give charity because I want to be honored, and I'm going to learn Torah because I want people to think of me and think, oh, look, that's a great Torah scholar. And I'm going to do mitzvah. People say, oh, what a righteous person. They do it for the wrong reason. Even the wrong reasons, miyad yenat elatov, that person becomes good. As my Rebbe used to say, a person's a bad person, thinking bad all day, they take one coin, put it in a pushka, they're on the way to doing good. Their mind is still bad. They're doing it for an ulterior motive, but the action itself makes them into a good person. Over koch ma'asav, and the power of their actions, yamit ha-yetzara, is going to kill the yetzara, says the Sefer Chinuch. Ki, because achrei hapulot nimshachem halavavot, because we know that your heart is going to be influenced by what you do. Your actions speak louder than your words or thoughts. And he says the other way around. V'afilu im hu yatzadik. You got a friend who's like really nice. They think about doing good things all day, and they're nice, and they're so good and so wonderful. V'libo yashav v'tamim, and their heart is straight and perfect. Chafetz b'torah, and they want to do good, and they talk about doing good, and they think about doing good. If they keep getting involved in bad stuff, right? They do bad stuff. Yashuv l'zman min zmanim me'tzidkach livon liyod rash hagmor. Give a little bit of time. They too are going to become bad people. Ki, because yadua, it's known, hadavar, ve'emet, and it's true, shekol adam nifel kefi polatav. A person is influenced what they do. If you give, if you do actions that are good, in your mind you're not a nice person, you will become a better person. Your actions are going to affect your mind. It's a very, very Jewish way of thinking. By the way, even in like modern psychology, right? They've gone to like start saying, you know what? Start doing good things and it'll fix your mind. Change your actions, and your actions will change your mind. Right? If you're good, do more good. Right? Sur mira, fa'aseh tov, says King David, Shlomo David HaMelech. Sur mira, don't do bad stuff. Aseh tov, good, do good stuff. Say the Chachamim, you know what that verse actually means? Sur mira, go away from evil. How? Aseh tov, do good stuff. That's the drush of that verse. Sur mira, how do I stop being bad? Just do good stuff. But I'm doing it for ulterior motive. People think, oh, what a tzedekah. Oh, she's such a... But do it! Don't think about it. Just do it. With this idea in mind, a very important idea, where do you think the Sefer Chinuch took a little right-hand turn and started to discuss this topic? Where do you think, in the list of all the mitzvot in the Torah, the Sefer Chinuch stopped and said, oh, check this out. This is what you need to know. Where in Jewish life was he? I'll give you a help. Where was he in the Jewish year? He was in Sefer Shemot, but then tons of mitzvot Sefer Shemot. Where do you think he was? That he said, you know what? Stop, I gotta help you over here. Because you're struggling. You're struggling with a lot of actions. Let me tell you how important all these actions are, even the small stuff. Where was he? Which mitzvah or category of mitzvot was he discussing? You can guess. Yeah, how do you know that?
I don't know.
You're right.
Like in my head.
It was there somewhere. It was deep in your neshama. Yeah. He's discussing Pesach, and he's talking about all the stress and the cleaning and all the actions we have to do in order to prepare for Pesach. So remember, we left Egypt and clean the house of a chametz, right? And you can't even own any chametz, and you got to destroy it all. You got to clean your house, then you got to get ready for the seder, and you got all this stuff. And he's like, "Whoa! 1 second, let me say something." You see, you can't just stop and remember. You see in Mitzrayim, which is the mitzvah, zecher is right. You've got to do actions, because we can discuss leaving Egypt, and we can talk about it all night. So you got to pick up a broom, and you got to clean out your house, and you got to get chametz, and you got to destroy it. And then you gotta make a seder, and you gotta get ready, you gotta buy matzah, and you gotta make matzah, and oh, there's a lot to do over here. He's like, I know you're stressed out, I know you think there's a lot of actions involved, many mitzvot, 7 mitzvot we do on Pesach directly on Seder night, 2 Doraita, 5 D'Rabbanan. More about that next semester, those who join us for the Purim Pesach class. He says, don't worry about it. You want to change your heart, you've got to do the actions. You've got to do the actions. We'll finish with this. There's a great story of the Chafetz Chaim. A man approached the Chafetz. I like the story, and I always connect it to this piece of Sefer Chinuch. The Chafetz Chaim was approached by a man who had a question. And he says, I've been offered a job, right? And I want to know whether to take this job or not. Right? People think rabbis ask questions about kashrut and stuff. You can also ask your rabbi whether you should take a job or not. Not all jobs are created equal. So the Chafetz Chaim said, well, what's your job? So he says, I've been offered a job at a bank. He says, well, which job? Withdrawal or deposit? Context. It used to be, in the old days, the banks had different tellers. One for depositing your money, and one for withdrawing the money. Nowadays, that's one job. But it used to be 2 separate positions. One person would be there to deposit the money and put it away, and one person there for the withdrawal. So he says, which job were you offered? So the man said, what's the difference? I'm working in the bank, same money. There's a big difference. He says, why? This is this amazing idea. We'll finish this. It shall blow your mind. It shall change the way you look at life. I tell you. Just this one simple story. So I'll tell you why. You see, if you work in the deposit window, you're going to spend your entire day taking money from people. Now, you're not going to steal it, and it's not your money. But you're going to spend the entire day taking money, taking money, taking money. But if you work in the withdrawal window, you're going to spend your entire day giving out money. Now, it's not your money. It's not charity. It's part of your job. It's their money. But if you spend your entire day just giving, you'll become a giver. Why? Because a person is affected by their actions, even actions which are not a mitzvah. If you spend your entire day taking money, you become a taker. If you spend your entire day giving money, you become a giver. That's just the way it works. And that was the advice that the Chafetz Chaim gave this individual. Okay, we shall stop over there. There will be a class, God willing, on Tuesday for Rosh Hashanah, and between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we shall be here. Have a great day.